Welcome to Jablam Hockey, folks. I'm your host, Peter Bojaranov. You can find me on Twitter at Russian98, and you can find our full team on Twitter at Jablam Sports. Please subscribe to us if you haven't done so yet, and click on the three dots in your podcasting app. Share our show with three hockey fans you know. Thank you. Respect. Check out our website as well, jablamsports.com. That's JABLAM sports.com. And right now, we're currently doing a series of Isolated Friends episodes. It's where I'll be talking to great friends, catching up, showcasing how they've been working hard in their lives, talking some hockey, maybe about their favorite teams, and of course, how they've been spending their time in this isolation period with the pandemic going on. Well, what do we have this episode? On this episode, we're going to be interviewing and talking to Craig Kirk. Kirk is also in television like me and some great friends that I have. He's a TD, a technical director, and also a production coordinator. Born in British Columbia, and he's a Penguins and Leafs fan. And he's also been to many big games, outdoor, and Penguins Stanley Cup Finals games. Time for some trending now. Joining me again is my good pal Logan Proskerniak. Logan, what's your Twitter handle again?
At hoagie99.com or at hoagie99.
Yep. And of course, what is trending? Well, first off, the big topic of the week, and it should be the big topic for society until we knock it down. That's racism. We're going to talk about racism in hockey for a little bit. I know we don't have enough time to delve into everything there is, and I will try to in the future on this podcast talk about it a little bit more. But let's go back a couple of months. Akim Aliu puts out a tweet and basically says, "This is what happened to me. There's racism in hockey." I think, when did this happen, Logan? This happened like months ago, maybe half a year ago?
Yeah, it was probably December, January. I can't quite remember the exact date. I do remember Hockey Night did a big discussion about it as well. With David Amber, Sarah Nurse, Anson Carter was brought on through Skype, I believe. And just former hockey players, current hockey players, and analysts. It was a great discussion about Akim, what Akim Aliu was saying, essentially, that racism does exist in hockey at every level, junior, AHL, NHL. And I think we've seen it before, too, in that, like a banana was thrown at Wayne Simmons in London, right?
Yeah.
The guy says, I didn't mean to do it, but you got to hold on to that banana all game and then throw it at the only black guy playing on the ice. Like, that's a bit on the nose. On the nose, right? So it's in the dressing rooms, it's in the stands, it's everywhere.
Yeah. And I feel that when players speak up a little bit like this, and especially like Aliu, I feel that a lot of people didn't listen to him. I feel that it was pushed aside a little bit, and also that players of color are given that, bad attitude reputation. That,
yeah,
and it's mainly because the way they've been treated, and it looks that way.
Yeah, like Evander Kane's probably the front runner for a so-called bad attitude. He was traded from Winnipeg for kind of having bad attitude. He's been chastised, I think, in San Jose for a couple things. But again, like, there's nothing. I don't think there's anything egregious with what he did. Maybe I don't know all the Winnipeg dressing room stuff, but just a lot of the social media stuff he seems to be getting flack for. It's like, it's not much different than a lot of the other guys. He's just on social media a bit more.
Well, Aliu goes to, in his article, and I tweeted it, he wrote one for the Players Tribune. It was the year I left my family home in Toronto to go play hockey in the OHL. I was a raw 16-year-old with a kid with a big dream that he'd make the show one day. Nothing was unusual about me. And then he goes on basically to say that the big star of the Windsor Spitfires, which is the team he played for, was bullying him. And that led to more and more bullying. And of course, because he's the leader in the dressing room, of course, when you're the superstar, people follow him. And when he gets treated poorly by him, the rest of his teammates treat him poorly.
Yeah, it's the mob mentality. It's the follow the leader mentality. You pick on one guy and, well, the cool guy's doing it. I'm going to do it too. I want to be with the cool guy.
Yeah. I think now, with Aliu then, and of course before, people not listening to players like Colin Kaepernick in the NFL, and now everything's slowly changing with, of course, the killing of George Floyd.
Yeah, hopefully everything's changing.
Hopefully. The hockey community is rising up for this cause. And of course, players, ex-players, current players across the league are speaking up now. Jonathan Toews, Austin Matthews, Ben Scrivens. Ben Scrivens was a good one. I liked it. I do recommend everybody to hear what he has to say. You can follow him on Twitter at Ben_Scrivens. And of course, Tyler Seguin spoke up. And Seguin was one of the first, I would say, white male players of the last week or two to go up, to stand up, to even go into the protests.
Yeah, I seen him in the protest there as well. It was nice.
Yeah, but again, the NHL really publicized that. And this is, again, where people don't notice. This is where white privilege kind of gets involved. Everybody makes it seem like Seguin is a hero here. Within the same day, pretty much, there's a formation of the Hockey Diversity Alliance, and they go into what they're going to be doing with their alliance, and it's signed by Aliu, Chris Stewart, Joel Ward, Evander Kane, Matt Dunbar, Trevor Daley, Wayne Simmons. I also hope they add some women of color in that group as well.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
This is the problem with systematic racism and hockey being that old school culture that it is, right? The reserved, the bland. And bland is, could we say it's white here, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Hockey is that shut up, do your job, don't be different, don't be unique, conform to what it is. And I don't know how that can be accepting to anyone that's different by actions or by the way they look.
Yeah, a lot of sports deal with, this is the way we've always done it. It's been, if you mess with the sport, it's, you take away the traditions and the 100-year lineage or something like that. But sometimes you have to change things, whether it's because science has made things better or because injuries are more prevalent or because there's rampant racism in all, from the professional level all the way down to the amateur levels. Like, if the change starts in the NHL, it could also trickle down all the way down into these kids' dressing rooms, right?
Yeah.
Akim Aliu steps up and says he was bullied in the OHL. Maybe the next guy in Windsor, next superstar in Windsor, is not going to do that.
Yeah.
Doesn't want to be that racist in the room.
I remember actually when I was growing up, I wasn't a very good hockey player. I wish I was. I stopped a lot because I always had bad feet growing up, and that's how I became slowly overweight over the years. But I didn't play as much, but I wish I did. And I remember this one summer where I was like, all right, well, I'm going to try roller hockey. I like trying different things. And as being a privileged person, I was allowed to easily try different things. Thank you to my parents. And I tried roller hockey one summer, and in the roller hockey league, what we had to do was, at the beginning of the season, we had to do like a mini tryout camp where you kind of, went on the ice, show what you had, and then they would divide you into different teams to spread it out and make sure everybody had it equally. Well, I had in my dressing room a black kid as well, and he was being like bullied. I can't remember exactly what they were saying, but I did hear some verbal, racist words. So I went and sat with him and talked to him. That's the best I could do because I didn't have any friends in there as well, and I just wanted to give him a friend to talk to. And it sucked because I wasn't a great player either, and I wasn't one of those. I have all these guys around me and popular players around me, but yeah. I hope that helped him, and I hope a lot of people do that too. Stand up for one another and be supportive, and of course listen.
Yeah, just essentially that's what if that's the only support you can do, the only thing you can do, then do it if you're able to.
Yeah, I remember also when I was growing up, I know I'm a Leafs fan, but I had a separate joy and love for the Red Wings. Because I remember growing up and there wasn't that many, even including the Leafs. On the Leafs, there wasn't very many black players. And I kind of did find that odd, just like they didn't have many Russian players. So when I was growing up, I actually started liking the Red Wings a bit. And they had a great team. And then, of course, they had the Russian Five. And that made me so much joy watching them and thinking, you know what? Oh, man, there's players with my last name that look like my last name. And they're playing hockey. And I would actually be the sixth player on that line. And this is why we need diversity. This is when we can actually say hockey can truly be for everyone. How amazing would it be if there was 5 African American players on the LA Kings, or 5 Asian Americans on the Florida Panthers, or Indo-Canadians on the Calgary Flames, for all cultures?
I like to think hockey is fairly international as it is, but it still excludes over half the countries in the world, more than half the countries in the world. It's mainly just a European and North American culture thing. I do like to see the Olympics when it's you see a Korea versus Canada, and get to see some of these smaller countries as well, smaller hockey countries as well. But that's how you grow the game too. Is you a little bit at a time, international levels, international tournaments. You bring the best over, and maybe you play either in the OHL or GTHL or whatever leagues we have over here to help grow the game. Then they take that back home and they go from there as well, right?
I hope hockey as a culture becomes more inclusive and allows players of all colors to be within our community.
I will say that it looks like they're taking the proper steps to do that with this diversity action programs and just acknowledging what's been happening in the dressing room. First step, and then keep going forward, right?
Yeah. So it's official when the NHL does come back. It looks like, and I'm happy about this, that it's going to be a 7-game series throughout the playoffs. So the first and second round, and before they weren't too sure, there were 5 or 7 games. And I think you need to keep that, right? You need to keep that 16-win mentality. And of course, maybe you do add the play-in with 3 more wins because those will be 5 games. But I'm glad that they decided to do that because normalcy is kind of what we want, at least as best it can be.
Yeah, it does. After the first round, it'll everything kind of settles back into regular playoffs. And high impact, high skill, best of the best. Goalie stealing a series or goalie stealing a game or two, and then everything's, like you said, normal, routine.
Yeah, and of course, the other addition to it will be teams will reseed after every round. So I know before some people weren't too thrilled, especially for a team like the Boston Bruins, that they had to play a mini round robin just to secure one of the higher top 4 spots. But now it's glorious, I think, for them. Any team that wins that round robin will be that top team throughout the duration of the entire playoffs. So, like, just say, for example, Chicago or Montreal lose, or like, say, Montreal, or not lose, but I mean, they win the play-in round, and they're technically like the last team, so they're team 12. And another team in the East, say it's, I don't know who would be out there. Is it Tampa? Or, of course, let's just say Boston. They win the round robin. So they're always going to be the number 1 team. That means they'll be playing Montreal first round, team 1 versus 12. And in the next round, say another one of those play-in teams won the first playoff round, then they could be going against like another lower tier team like the New York Rangers, a team 10 team. So that's like a huge advantage for a team that wins that round robin.
Yeah, it's a great incentive to actually win games towards the end, not rest some people, continue playing well. As long as they keep this going forward as well. Everything could change next year, I guess. But I do like the idea of, like, if you've won the most games, maybe have the more advantage. You've worked all that way to get there. Why all of a sudden now do you have to play just because you were seated next to the third best team or whatever? Now you got to play them while it's the lower tiers are playing each other for a chance at the semifinal or the finals. They're like the Eastern finals or Western finals. But if you work that hard, like, you should be rewarded, right?
I kind of like it. There's a lot more up in the air now. I think this is kind of how it was a little bit, at least, before we decided to go to the format within, the division rivalries and staying towards that. So you're building more. I think the NHL really wanted to build that whole rivalry aspect in the playoffs, especially in that opening round.
Yeah. I do remember, like, Oilers way back when they made their cup run against Carolina. I think they had to go through the top 3. They were the 8th seed, and they had to go through the top 3 in the Western in order to get to the finals. So that in itself is a monumental task, and that's a great. If they would have won, it would have been an even greater story for them.
Oh yeah, when the LA Kings won that one year, they were upsetting teams and going through Team 1, Team 2, and Team 3 in those opening rounds. And it was amazing run to watch. And that's kind of, I wish they put that back on whoever is playing old school game, Sportsnet or TSN on air. That run there by the LA Kings was fantastic to watch. And you know what? LA kind of deserved that route to take because they weren't great in the playoffs. But they deserved the cup even more so because of what they accomplished in those playoffs.
Exactly.
All right. Next up is Craig Kirk. Listen in, folks. Now time for me to introduce my friend Craig Kirk, Production Coordinator, Television, and Technical Director. He's worked at NHL on Rogers, Chorus Entertainment, TSN, Sportsnet, CBC, and of course he's finished university at Victoria. And where'd you finish college?
Camosun College.
Camosun College. Where is that exactly?
It's also in Victoria.
Also in Victoria. All right, cool. So before we get into more of where you grew up and everything from, tell the listeners what exactly is a production coordinator and then technical director.
Well, it's basically, like, I'm sure your listeners and yourself know, in television on there, then you're just putting the pictures on air. So anything that you're seeing with a hockey game or with any type of production or newscast on there, then it basically falls in the technical director and coordinator to put everything together and to ultimately press the right button and get the right items in line to then be going to air. So if ever you see the wrong camera cut or a black going to air or some other thing, then that's probably when someone screwed up something in that job.
So it's only the TD's fault and not the director's fault.
Yeah.
All right.
I usually always say, like, to the director, like, are you sure? Or like hesitate a bit when there's something that clearly seems to be wrong or that is on there. So I hesitate. And then there are some directors that like to make mistakes, or not like to make mistakes, but like to at least have the TD make mistake for them.
Mm-hmm.
And some directors that appreciate that you will hold off and not make mistake and they, oh, thank you very much. But there are several different types of directors or different people, as you know, in the production world.
Yeah, it takes a while, and you get a good flow once you you understand how people work together well. You get a rapport. Yeah, and then in terms of everything, the current state of the pandemic that we're in, have you noticed any differences within the workplace put in?
Yeah, of course, because in as you know, and some of your listeners might know, then that in like a live television news control room environment on there, then there's it's short on space, especially in any mobile trucks for any of the live hockey games or basketball games or soccer sports games on there. So ultimately, those need to get sorted out, and I haven't been in any of those for the pandemic. But in even the regular control rooms for news productions, now with a lot of the ones that I've been in lately, then there are restrictions, like strict restrictions on who's allowed in the control room. Before that, there was all the technical people also in there, plus then there were producers, assistant producers, interns, and all these things that sitting in different rows and areas of the control room. Now it's a lot of them that have specific signs and restrictions saying there are only the essential people allowed in here. You can't, you have to ask permission or call and try before anyone outside of these people are allowed in. And then there's obviously then a lot of ones have installed plexiglass in between different positions, and some places either you shared headsets when you came into the control room. Now you obviously have your own headset. A lot of them provide wipes to wipe down your area before you're coming in and out. I know that other ones are minimizing the switching over of positions, just because sometimes you might be working on one show one day and another show the next day in a different control room. Now they're coordinating that, so that now it's like if someone's working on a show, then you're on that show indefinitely or for at least a couple of weeks and the stuff, so that there isn't as much of people going in and out and the stuff. So trying to minimize as much as possible. Yeah.
I hear there's a lot of chirping in the background. I know this is not the same type of chirping that we're used to on the ice, but yeah. What kind of birds you got back there?
I don't know. It's sometimes it sounds like a bird sanctuary back here, depending on the time of day. But I know there's some keeping in the sports themes. I know that there are some blue jays that come by here, and there's other robins and there's woodpeckers off a little bit further away. But I'm not sure what the noisy ones are right now.
Yeah, blue jays are really pretty.
Yeah.
So you're originally from Smithers, British Columbia, which is about roughly 13 hours north of Vancouver and about 4 hours west of Prince George. Were you a Prince?
Depends on how fast you drive.
Yeah. Were you a Prince George Cougars fan growing up?
No, not really. I mean, because the funny thing is that I moved from Smithers when I was 6.
Okay.
So then I didn't follow hockey too much then, even though I do have our parents got us some jerseys. I think there's a picture of me with like a Calgary Flames jersey from when I was a kid. But then we moved to Victoria, and then Victoria actually had the Victoria Cougars.
Mm-hmm.
So then the Victoria Cougars kind of sucked, and they were never very good on there. So, then I was sort of a fan of them, and I remember before, like, for some reason, I remember the captain of like one of the Victoria Cougars. I'm not sure, from the early '90s or something. That stuff was like Rob Butts, and like that was just the Captain Butts, and I was like, as a kid, you're like, oh, that's the guy's name? Okay. But yeah, even the Victoria Cougars, they used to actually be the original Victoria Cougars used to be they used to be the Victoria Cougars. They won the Stanley Cup, actually, I think, in like 1925. And then after they won the Stanley Cup, they kind of upped and moved to Detroit. And so the Detroit Red Wings are basically the Victoria Cougars from like 1925.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I don't know if I knew that. I think I knew that they were from somewhere before, but yeah, that's pretty cool. That's a good origin story.
Yeah, I know. I got a bunch of like useless NHL facts and other facts in my head. I know in high school they had the NHLPA had like these giveaway things where they would I think there's like 20 questions of historical questions about the NHL or NHL players and this stuff that you would answer them. And then out of all the correct answers, then they would draw a name and then you would get like some prize or something. So, but the weird thing was this was like the mid to late 90s and this stuff. So it was just starting in all these giveaway things. I would enter it every week and this stuff and use my books or research and or things I just know and answer the questions. And then one week, like one day I got like a package that was randomly arrived. And then I was like, I don't know what the heck this is. It's addressed to me, which I'm like a teenager and this stuff. I never would order anything. It's not like Amazon now where you get packages every day. But then some package arrived and I'm like, okay, what the hell is this? And then open it up and it's some NHLPA. I don't know if you remember way back, there was the NHLPA like via player shows with like Christine Simpson and Brett Lindros on this. So yeah, like it was like one of their NHLPA jerseys like that with like red and white and this stuff and signed by Mike Huff. Oh, yeah. even at the, like, as I was a hockey fan in the mid 90s there, I was like, who the heck is Mike Huff? And like, I had to look up and I was like, oh, okay. So I think it was like back in like, must have been 95, 96 and this stuff. Cause I know that or no, it must have been 96, 97 or so. Cause it was right after Florida went to the Stanley Cup Finals and Mike Huff was on those Florida Panthers. Mm-hmm. So that was my claim to fame on this stuff. It was like, oh yeah, I got a Mike Huff signed jersey. My friends would joke with me like, Mike who? What? Yeah.
I remember them really sharply when they had the player strike and then we had the NHLPA tournament. And like it was kind of like Gretzky's league, and then they all had the NHLPA jersey logos, and there's the 4 different colors for like Ontario and the States and Western Canada and Quebec. So I don't know. I actually enjoyed that tournament. I remember even as a kid, and just like I did enjoy a couple of years ago the World Cup of Hockey. Actually, it was pretty good hockey.
Yeah, no, it was like I said, you have that many good players on there, then it's not watered down because there's only a few teams on there and all the top players are playing, and it's good hockey.
Yeah. All right, so we will get to more hockey in a bit. You've worked for TSN, Sportsnet, CBC, Rogers, and NHL. What cool events have you worked on?
I've worked on all different types of events. Like for the most part, a lot of the events that I've worked on, I haven't gone anywhere. Like I think the most that because there are people that fly everywhere all the time on this stuff, and I'm of a different tack because while that's cool and you get to go there, sometimes you are not actually seeing or doing anything on there. Like there are occasions when you can do that stuff on there, and I'm jealous sometimes of those people, of friends on Facebook and this stuff that are out in following along with the playoffs, and on their off days they're going to baseball games, like back before all this COVID stuff is going on, and off at the Olympics or other things on there. Then they're off if they get a day off. Usually Olympics, then people don't get days off. It's usually before or after if you specifically asked to stay for a little bit longer. But I went to Ottawa for the All-Star game up there. Then it was cool because they closed down the whole Rideau Canal thing just for the NHL. And then the weird thing was that because the NHL was so pumped up about having the Rideau closed and having all the NHLers and just the picture of it all, like the Rideau Canal, it wasn't actually that like as, I don't want to say as safe as it should be on there, but normally there's a certain threshold up to what how many days of minus 20 degrees or whatever the degrees is for the Rideau Canal has to be before they can open it and let people go on there. But because the NHL was there and they had all these events and their launching events set for that day, then they basically kind of opened the Rideau Canal, even though I don't think it was actually approved in a normal circumstance to be open, because they had it open and this stuff for all the NHL and for all the fanfare and this stuff on there. And I got to go skate before we started in there. I brought my skates and skated up one way and back the other way back because our truck was right on the canal there. So then I did that before I started my shift, and then did my shift with the skates and then the truck there afterwards. And then every day after that, then it was closed. After there wasn't an NHL event on it, they kept it closed the whole time because it wasn't, I guess, their threshold for that. So there's that. And then I worked on a bunch of different Olympics and World Cups, all basically from my main location and the broadcaster main location in Toronto on there, which is not as exciting as kind of being out there, but it's still like you're still working on it and sometimes working crazy hours, and then that's obviously the way the industry is going right now. Then, because even our announcers and this stuff, a lot of the announcers are in the broadcast location hub there, which is in Canada. It's primarily in Toronto there. So then they're even when they're doing their hits and the stuff, they're on like a nondescript background, just with whatever the Olympics is, the logo behind them, and CBC or TSN or Sportsnet on there. So it's just working on that stuff and doing all that is kind of cool.
All right. So you are a Penguins fan, but you grew up in BC. How did you become a Penguins fan?
Well, I'm sort of a Penguins and Leafs fan on there because it was a weird type thing because like I'm from BC. Obviously, I have pictures of me wearing I think like I said, a Flames jersey or something when my parents bought us and dressed us on there. But then in BC, then I like Pittsburgh because my favorite player is Mario Lemieux, and I like everything he's gone through and all of that. So and growing up in the late 80s on there, then it was Gretzky, Lemieux were the top two guys there, and I was always the Lemieux fan and thought Gretzky had so much help from all the rest of the Edmonton Oilers players, so I like Lemieux much better than that. And so then I was a Pittsburgh fan, but part of the problem is that my brother was also a Pittsburgh fan, and as like an 8-9-year-old and this stuff, he's telling me, he's older than me, he's telling me, no, you can't be a Pittsburgh fan. Like, I'm a Pittsburgh fan, that means that you can't be a Pittsburgh fan. Like, you need to find someone else to be a fan of. And for the longest time, I'd be like, no, like I like Pittsburgh, I wanted to be them. He's like, no, we're in Victoria, you should just be a Canucks fan. I'm like, no, I don't want to be a Canucks fan, I like Pittsburgh. So then eventually I just kept on being a Pittsburgh fan despite his claims against that. And then when I remember during the 93 playoffs on there for the Maple Leafs, I was big on the sports betting stuff in BC on there. So I'd be doing, it's the same thing as Proline out in Ontario, that they had their own, I think it was Sports Action out in BC on there. So I would do that. And I remember distinctly that I bet against the Leafs in the 93 playoffs, Game 7 against Detroit Red Wings. Because I was like, oh, well, Detroit's clearly going to win. This is like, they're the top team and this stuff. And then I think because it was like a 3-game ticket, so I won the first 2 ones, and the last one was the Detroit one. I'm like, oh, this is easy. This is in the bag. Like, I think I picked some harder odds ones for the first 2, and I was almost ready to spend my money, whatever it was, like $30 or something. Then obviously watch the game and see Toronto win in overtime there. I was like, oh, like I lost my money, but then I really liked watching them as a team and thought they were a good team there. So then that kind of started me like on the road to kind of liking Toronto as a team. I like the team, I like the players on there, and obviously from Pittsburgh, then I was watching them. So it was kind of like I had 2 favorite teams, and I even when I was in high school, I would draw hockey players all the time, and so that even if there was a different assignment somehow, that the teacher would give an assignment saying, oh, you have to do XYZ, then I would somehow bring that around to integrate hockey players or something else to draw those into the assignment. So, and I know I drew, like, because back then Toronto was in the Western Conference, right? So my ultimate dream thing was to see Toronto and Pittsburgh in like the Stanley Cup Final, because it could happen back then. Because like, okay, well, I'm good either way. Like either team that plays there, then I can win. But so I had a little bit of a good run there between Pittsburgh in the early 90s and then Toronto in there, a couple of runs there. But then it was down for a little while after that type thing, because both Toronto and Pittsburgh kind of went into the doldrums for a while.
Yeah, but then you got Sidney Crosby, and that all changed. All right.
Yeah. Well, I did also, because 94 was the worst, because like I said, I was a Pittsburgh and Toronto fan, and then obviously Vancouver getting into playing Toronto in the Stanley Cup semifinals, and then going into the finals. Like everyone was against me in high school back in '94, because I was sitting there cheering for Toronto, and everyone else was cheering for Vancouver. And then I still to this day, like, I was cursing and swearing at the NHLs, because they used to have the 2-3-2 format for the playoffs for traveling. So like, and that's what they had for that series there. And I to this day I was saying that it was that damn 2-3-2 format. If they had the normal, because Toronto was the better team. So, but meanwhile they were meant to win. Vancouver just had to win one game in Toronto, and then they could win all three other home games, and they could take it away, which they did. Yep. So if it had been the regular 2-2, 1-1-1, then I think Toronto would at least had a closer shot at winning that and moving on to the finals like Vancouver did.
Yeah, it was a close, tough one. Speaking about like getting an admiration for Leafs after you lost on your ticket, I was kind of like the same. Like, I guess when I was really young and I just cried when Gretzky scored, I was very different. And I think it was 2001 when they played against the Flyers, and Primo and Roenick beat them at a tough series. And then I kind of like felt admiration for that, such a battle of a series, and for JR and Primo in them. I was like, man, you know what? They deserve it. It was a very good series. It was so close, but it was a backbreaker and it hurt. But man, I actually felt.
Did you become a fan of them or what?
A little bit, just a little bit, especially Roenick. That series, man, he's such a good battler in the playoffs, and I was just like, it hurts, but man, he deserves it too. So it is what it is. So and then I actually ended up having. I'm thinking I actually ended up getting a Flyers jersey, and I got a JR jersey later on when he played for the Coyotes.
Yeah, nice. Oh, I remember like when I moved to Toronto, then I went to one of the games. I can't remember what year it was and this stuff, but when Philadelphia played Toronto and Philadelphia beat Toronto, because I think it was JR that got actually like killed at center ice by Darcy Tucker.
Yeah.
And then like it became a breakaway for, I'm not sure who it was that went down there and scored. I don't know if it was overtime, but it might have been like late in the third period, because I know that it was like I was there and I watched the thing, and like because I saw JR like crumpled on the ground, or maybe it was him that scored, but I can't remember a thing. But yeah, then and I was cursing his name and cursing the Flyers, like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man. And, like, he just battled that whole series. Like, I think Primo ended up scoring that big goal. But, oh, man, both of them were fantastic. It was an exciting, great series to watch. Maybe I should go back and watch that one. All right. So you have gone to many games as well, including 2008 and 2009, back-to-back years, Detroit and Pittsburgh. And where Hossa, of course, was on opposite sides of the winning team.
He would have both of those, too.
Could a whole season be down to one face-off? Zetterberg installed to go for it with 6.5 to go. Off the tie-up, it comes back to the point. Rafalski, the shot, knocked down in front, scrambled,
I remember it was Lidstrom, right, that they made the save on?
Oh, my goodness. What a save Fleury made on Lidstrom right there with like a second remaining. And, of course, you were at that game in Detroit. Game 7. Oh, my God. How did it feel? You're at Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals. You're watching your Penguins play. Oh, my goodness. And you were at the series the year before as well. I think Game 1 or 2?
Yeah. Yeah, I went to Game 1 for that. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And because like when the year before, when they're going to the finals, then like, okay, well, Pittsburgh's a little bit farther away from Toronto, so and plus Pittsburgh, the prices were through the roof for tickets and this stuff. But meanwhile, Detroit, like they had been in the playoffs for 20 years straight or something. So like it was like the Atlanta Braves on this thing, and that like there were all these fans that had been there, done that, like so there were a lot more tickets that were readily available or for cheaper prices in Detroit than there were for Pittsburgh, and it was closer. So as soon as Pittsburgh got in the finals, I'm like, okay, that's it. Like I got to get tickets. Like I just won one ticket, so it's easier to get one ticket than a pair. So I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna go and do it. And so then I went, got the one ticket there, and Game 1 in the previous year, the 2008 thing was then I was pretty good seats though. I think it was like maybe like, I don't know, 5 to 10 rows up or so.
Wow.
And sitting next to a couple that were regular season ticket holders. They had gone through, seen all the stars go through and watch all the different championship things on there. So I was chatting with them and stuff. Then there was a kid on the other side that was a Detroit fan. She had all the stuff there, and I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years old. And that was the worst part on there, because I was chatting and laughing with all the things there, and I had my Penguins jersey, I think, for there, so they knew I was a Penguins fan. They were like ragging on me the whole time, and then Pittsburgh lost that game, I think like 5-1 or something ridiculous on there, in the game 1 there. And the little kid, the 5 or 6 year old next to me, was merciless. It was like they had one of those little like goal stick things where like they could wave around and the light goes on the thing, and like every time Detroit scored, she's sitting there like waving the thing in my face. I'm like, oh come on, like what can I do here? Like I'm surrounded by Detroit fans, and this 5 or 6 year old kid like just making fun of me. So yeah, I didn't find her back the next year when I went to the game 7 there. That would have been, I still would have been the loser if I was making fun of a 5 or 6 year old kid that her team lost. But
she would have been a year older. Come on.
Yeah, she could handle it. But yeah, no, it was great with that there, because like once the game was over, you got to, all the fans could go down, like, because no one was in the seats there. So then I made my way down to like the ice level type, not ice level, but like the first row of the seats and the stuff, where everyone was crowding around there to kind of for all the presentation, for all the pictures and this stuff, and the players going around. So it was cool. And I briefly hesitated because I saw some other people that obviously were associated with the team, like coming down the stands and then hopping over and getting on the ice. Like their players are like wives or friends or stuff on there that were allowed on there. And I briefly thought for a second, I'm like, I wonder if I could just hop over there and like pretend I'm with people on this stuff on there. And then I thought better of it, obviously, because I might get arrested in Detroit in this thing, which isn't a good thing. And secondly, also because I work with Hockey Night in Canada, and like I mentioned before, all the people that travel with Hockey Night in Canada and do that stuff for all the playoffs, they go to all the games.
Yep.
There was like 10 to 15 people on the ice that knew me and knew that I wasn't with anything on there. So I wouldn't want to put them in the position or have them rat me out or something. Or it was just a bad situation to be in, to be like, oh yeah, just like hop over there and start waving to people I know working on productions. But yeah, but I did get, I was a little bummed because the players were tossing all this stuff, like they were spraying like champagne over the ice and other things, and to all the fans and the Pittsburgh fans that were cheering. And then one of them, or I think a couple of them, threw over some of like those like green Gatorade player bottles, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like from the bench.
Yeah.
So then like I actually got one of those that they had tossed over. And so like I used that when I was playing hockey all the time. Like it was like, yeah, this is a championship Gatorade bottle here. And then one day, I don't know if it was at hockey or when I moved, I lost it. So I left it behind somewhere. I lost it. So I was bummed that I missed that, because like that was my Stanley Cup Championship Gatorade bottle, and I left it behind somewhere. And meanwhile, if someone picked it up, then they would have no idea, because there was no sign or anything else. So it looks like the exact same green Gatorade bottle that you have any other hockey game or like at a garage sale or something. So they would have really no idea where it was from. So
they really wanted it just because they were thirsty. Meanwhile, for you, it has so much memories and good things about it. Oh. All right. And you also were at a couple of outdoor games. You've been to the 2014 Stadium Series, Penguins versus Hawks. I think that was in Soldier Field. And you were also at the Centennial Classic game, Wings Leafs Exhibition Stadium here in Toronto. Did you freeze your butt off?
Yeah, the Soldier Field one, the Blackhawks and Penguins, that one for sure. Like I went with a buddy of mine there, and then like the thing with that is that we were kind of a mix up on there, because I can't remember what it was. I think like I had really good gloves and he had really good shoes or boots, or the other way around. But either way, like either his feet were cold and my hands were cold, or my hands were cold and his feet were cold. So it was one or the other. So like. And they had like some heaters that were kind of under the stadium seats on there. So every time that the intermission hit, we would walk all the way around, because there was like a 5-10 minute walk even just to get to under the seats on this thing. So we walk to where then there was actually like a like industrial strength like heater type thing going, and there's obviously a bunch of other people around there. But we would just huddle up to there and kind of get as much heat as we can, like one for their hands, one for their feet and stuff. And then once the second period started or the third period started, we'd make our way back up to our seats to warm up and do that. And so then so that was kind of the part of the cold part on there. I know the Centennial Classic in Toronto on there, that wasn't as bad on this stuff. That was I went with my wife and I, and so we were there, and it was pretty good seats on this stuff. Because then we got to see and Bryan Adams, I think, sang the anthem on there, which made me tell my wife about. Because actually in '98, when the NHL All-Star Game was in Vancouver, then I went over to go to that thing. There was All-Star skills competition in the game. I think it was the first year of the World versus the North America format they had there. And then so I went to see that, and Bryan Adams also sung the national anthem in that All-Star game. And he actually forgot the words on there, because I remember everyone sitting in the stands there and like listening and watching along, and all of a sudden like he goes off on some weird tangent of words and singing on this, and everyone's looking around like those aren't the words, like. And I can't remember if he like saved it or what on there, but I know everyone was kind of questioning what the heck was happening there. But getting back to the Toronto one, that wasn't as bad. Like we lasted perfectly fine without being I think that was close to like 0 degrees or so. So, but I know that I think the other year later, there's actually another. I went to my wife and I went to an outdoor game in Ottawa. That was Ottawa versus Montreal because we were there already for a different thing. So we went to that, and we didn't last the whole game for there. I'm sad to say that as a hockey fan on there, although it wasn't really teams that I was that too concerned about. But yeah, I think it was like a record cold in Ottawa that evening.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was like -26, -30 or something, and with the wind chill on there. And like because it was in the Ottawa Red Black Stadium, I think there. And they didn't have any set up near like what they had like at the Soldier Field and stuff. They didn't have any heating things for people. They didn't have like, at least not that I saw in there. There was just like one small little, because there's two sides of the fields, and one side of the field had like an actual heated indoor space. The other side, it was all outdoors and this stuff on there. So like you couldn't get any heating. You had to go all the way to the other side to try and jam into some indoor space there that obviously everyone else was sitting in. So yeah, that one we kind of bailed, I think early in the second period for that, because it was way too cold, and we weren't that prepared for that one.
I see. That's weird. It's going to be interesting too if everything does get more delayed, if the NFL gets delayed and more games are going to be played in the winter season. I think fans, especially some maybe Southern fans, will be like, this is horrible.
I know, because I know the NFL always like usually does their schedule, because I know in Buffalo on there, then they obviously like probably like 4 or 5 of their games sometimes are in snowy conditions on this stuff. So I know they plan that around that with their scheduling on there, and I know fans like pick and choose based on that stuff. So I don't know what's going to happen if the NFL has to delay their season on there. I mean, who knows even if there will be fans in the stands for that. So
yeah, and even for the CFL for that matter, more games playing in the winter too. Because usually the season's done before then, right? So that'll be interesting. We'll see what happens when we get there. All right, so talking about a little bit more hockey and this pandemic that we're in, if they come back, how do you think like the Penguins or even say the Leafs, do you think they'll fare if the season does come back?
Yeah, well, I was just looking at the standings the other day, because obviously you forget what exactly the standings were when it all ended, like back in mid-March on there. So, but it's because I know I was even a little worried with the Leafs on this thing, because they were at 81 points, and there was like a whole host of teams obviously that were right on their heels and right around them. So I was almost a little worried that then they weren't even going to make it on this, because they had injuries and they weren't playing well at different times. So I mean, but now, at least with this break on there, I think that they'll probably have a better chance to be moving forward. I mean, they're meant to be playing Columbus, I believe, in the first like prelim playoff series on there.
Yep.
I mean, it doesn't help them that much that if they do then beat Columbus, then they're going to have whoever, because I just know that they now said that it's going to be reseeded on there. So I don't know who the heck they're going to play. There's no actually bracket to know for 100% for sure who the heck they might play based on who wins on the other series down there. So I think that Toronto will have a good chance to at least make it through Columbus. And then hopefully then, because they're young and they're fast, then maybe they can, this break will do them good. And it's just a question of, I know people have said before about with Sheldon Keefe, whether or not he's going to be, this is going to be his first kick at the can in like an NHL actual playoff season on there. Like he's done well in the AHL and he won it down there. So I don't know how much that actually will fit, because AHL and NHL, you're going to have a pretty similar type of run. Not that I speak from any experience in comparing the two on there, but like I would think that it would be pretty similar with the AHL playoffs and NHL playoffs. Just the NHL, obviously, I think you play every other day or something, every second day. So it's more often than the AHL stuff but they play like 2 or 3 games all in a row there. So I think that the NHL playoffs are going to be a new animal for everyone on here. And so it's just going to be a matter of how much Sheldon Keefe can kind of adjust and work with that. And I think that he's bright enough, it seems like, and that he embraces kind of change and out of the box thinking processes to try and exploit the what the NHL sets up as much as he can. Mm-hmm. And for Pittsburgh on there, then again, they are kind of blessed with 2 amazing goalies right now. So and again, like every team on there, then they're going to be healthy now. Like they weren't that beat up, I think, before the break on there, but it's a huge thing to have a healthy Crosby, healthy Malkin, 2 great goalies to be able to rely on. Matt Murray, who won 2 Stanley Cups already, and then Tristan Jarry, that was like had better stats than Matt Murray in the regular season leading up to now. So I mean, the biggest thing that you have in the playoffs is your goalies. So if you can rely on your goalies, especially in maybe an elongated playoff season for some of the lower teams, because like remember that this is still like that the NHL playoffs and the Stanley Cup playoffs is one of the longest kind of extended playoff season of any professional major sport. And now for the teams that are seeded 5 through 12 now, it's going to be that much longer for them, because they're basically playing the best of 5 round robin in addition to the 4-7 game series now. So instead of getting 16 wins, now you're going to have a mission 19 wins? Like, there's always all these playoff promotional departments and the stuff that have it so mission 16W and all these cross off 16 wins. Now all the lower rung teams, now they're going to have mission 19W. Like that's what they need. Yeah. So, but that's obviously a benefit for the top 4 teams, that they don't need to go through that much and play that many games. But it might be a benefit to the lower teams, because they're going to get right back into game shape pretty quickly and be at more of an advantage, while the top 4 teams are still practicing and playing a scrimmage. Yeah. Well, we'll see. It sounds like they're going to do that round robin tournament for the top 4 teams, and then that will at least tell them if they're going to be a 1, 2, or 3, or 4. So at least they're battling for something important. And as well, because it sounds like they're doing the reseeding thing, if you're that top team, you're that top team against the lowest team every single round. So I think that's even bigger value than we've ever had for a team in NHL, at least. Like, this has happened before with other leagues in sports, but not with the NHL. So this is very different. Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see for sure. Yeah, and then what do you think, like, because you were saying, like, 19 wins, it's a bigger battle, and I'm kind of glad that they've decided to go with, 4 wins for every round, the 7 games that they were contemplating, maybe not for the first 2 rounds. But a lot of people think
if you do win this year, it's an asterisk year. Really? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, especially if you have to win, if it's one of those other lower rung teams, you have to win 19 games. You would think that's even, it can be an asterisk, but the other way is that this was even harder to win than that. I mean, given that, you've had a couple months off to kind of rest up, and you get more of a full lineup to actually play on there. So I think it's more of a balance. I don't think there should be an asterisk on there. I mean, I think it's more with the Major League Baseball or something, with their thing of trying to say that, we're going to have a 50-game regular season now. That would kind of be an asterisk to any full season awards or anything else with that. That would be okay, now usually, because in baseball, the Washington Nationals that won that, they were out of the playoffs and under 500 at the 50-game mark in baseball.
Yep.
But getting back to the hockey on there, then I think that it's obviously a different situation because there's been this big huge break, and now everyone can get healthy. But that's also the balance with, but now you're also going to be playing more games, not going to be having fans, not going to be in different rinks and this stuff. So it's there's pluses and minuses on either side, but I think ultimately it balances out.
Yeah, I really think there should be an asterisk because of how much harder, in my opinion, it will be to get it. That'll be look at this. We deserve this asterisk because look at what we've done. We didn't play hockey. We have been out of it for 3 or 4 months. Now we're slowly getting back into a grind, and then it's a playoff action right when we come back. And not only is it physically more demanding, mentally it'll be more demanding if they're not with their family members, they don't get to see them, and then going through the pandemic while you're playing such important games. I think it's going to be a big mental adjustment for a lot of teams, and if they can get through that, I think it will be more deserving of winning that cup, and we'll see.
Yeah. I think you're right. The asterisk should be the other way because, especially no matter how many games of free golf or something that you get to play during the time there, you're quarantined for up to, I think it was 70 days, 68, 70 days, if you actually make it to the Stanley Cup Finals on this and go to that. So you've already been in quarantine for 2 or 3 months right now. Just imagine in quarantine playing hockey every day and this stuff and not being able to see your family and doing all that stuff. So, I mean, there's technology's come a whole bunch of right now. So then I think that it's beneficial that guys can talk to people and still interact and deal with their family. Because heck, I mean, that's what doctors and frontline workers are doing right now. A lot of them aren't seeing their families to protect them on there. So they're only calling and talking to their families from there. So, and meanwhile, these athletes are getting paid millions of dollars and are being set up or potentially being set up in hotel rooms or resorts and with all these free things and activities available to them. There's obviously drawbacks and not ideal on there, but in the situation, then it's time to kind of look at your life as a whole and see, I'm getting paid millions of dollars to play hockey. Then my team could, the worst case scenario, I'm going to be locked away for 68 days. And that's if I win a Stanley Cup. So the contractual benefits, the sponsorship benefits, all of that thing, I think outweigh things a lot more. And I'm obviously not in the situation of either people, from a frontline worker or from a hockey player. So it's difficult for me to be pointing at one person saying that they shouldn't complain, they don't have that hard, but just look at it from the bigger picture and this stuff, that there are people that are doing this stuff that aren't being paid $1 million, that are frontline workers that are doing the exact same thing that hockey players or other athletes might be complaining about and saying that then try and look at it from a bigger picture on there. And I get that. I think some people are saying, oh, well, my wife's pregnant, so what, am I going to miss the birth of my child on there? And obviously they'd have to address those type of things, because you want to have someone being able to be able to see the birth of their child and the stuff and take the appropriate time away, and then come back. And obviously there's going to be tons of testing from all the major sports leagues on there too.
Yeah. You know what? And on that note, Craig, is there anything else you wanted to say or add?
No, I just who's your pick then to win? Like, who you think's gonna? Who do you think got the most benefit from this break and a restart for the NHL? Like, who's gonna be the best positioned team?
Well, really, I think you're nitpicking me because I do the fantasy playoff thing, and you want a little hint on there. But I really think that obviously the bottom 4 teams that really didn't have a chance now have a chance, and on top of that, if they don't make the second round, they still have a chance to get a draft lottery pick. So I think it's a double whammy good thing for those teams, those teams, because now they have a shot. Like Chicago and Montreal, like in my opinion, they only really have a shot because they're such a big market, and then the NHL decided to go with 24 teams, where in my opinion, I think it would have been better if it was 20 teams, because those teams actually had a legitimate shot, whereas those...
Well, like you're saying, some of those teams were selling off. Like, they sold off all their guys, right?
Yeah.
Like, the Chicago sold off Glenner on this stuff. All that Montreal was selling off guys to send them to other playoff teams.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, we're done. They got to play in the playoffs and this stuff, and they don't even have their full team because they were giving up on the season.
Yeah, so we'll see. But I still think some of those teams, like if Carey Price is classic Carey Price, or if Patty Kane can play like Patty Kane plays, and the Hawks, and they still have basically that core together, and they've added some good pieces on the side, like DeBrincat and the rest of them. I don't know. I think like Chicago could be a bit of a dark horse in this, and some of those other teams could be. But again, those top 4 teams, I still think they do have a better chance, and I'm actually looking at certain teams, like I think Vegas has maybe even a better chance now. So we'll see. I don't know. I just have an inkling of one of those teams that are, always kind of fresh and not based on drilling through the whole season and going in. Those teams might be better, and I also do think it's going to benefit some of the younger teams, the teams that have younger, fresher legs, because they're going to be a little bit more fresh and more adjusted to change. Whereas if you're an older guy, you're not used to just rushing in and going straight to the playoffs. So
but then the older guys also, like the older guys kind of know their bodies better and know how their bodies respond. So younger guys just kind of like go for it. I mean, maybe it's changed a little bit now and there, but a lot of the older guys, then they keep better care of themselves because they know they're breaking down. So the younger is just kind of like, okay, let's just go.
Yeah.
So maybe that might be the thing too, that the veterans kind of have a better understanding of how to prepare and go from 0 to 100, whereas the younger guys might like be pulling hammies all over the place because they're not used to, especially playing in the summer. That's like even once you even get started, it's way past the time when they usually be playing.
Yeah.
So no one's used to playing in July or August.
But then you can look at who's usually the best at the beginning of the regular season, kind of thing. You can kind of figure out maybe who's better at that time after a long stretch of not playing, who's better with the fresh legs at the beginning. But again, this playoffs is going to be very different. It's a longer playoffs, especially for those play-in teams. So again, it's going to be those teams that adjust better every single round. And we don't know. Yeah. We've never been in this situation before to know what's gonna happen. So it's gonna be interesting.
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Craig, thank you for coming on the show. It was really great catching up with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That was a great chat I had with Kirk there a few days ago. It was awesome to hear about the history of some junior hockey in BC, and of course all the cool games he's been a part of and been to. Well, that's it for this episode of Jablam Sports Hockey. Go to jablamsports.com and check out everything we've been doing there. We have all our past episodes from our podcast on there. Click on podcasts and you get there. You get all season 1 is slowly get on there, and we're putting on all the old episodes as well. And of course, our new episodes are there too. Also, if you like wrestling, check out our new wrestling podcast, Pro Wrestling Explode, from our team here at Jablam Sports. We have Joey the pepperoni on there. Of course, we get into some AEW and WWE and recap and analyze recent matches, storylines, and what's in wrestling news. All right, please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow me again on Twitter at Russian98 or the entire team at Jablam Sports. Jablam Sports. All right, everybody out there, thank you for listening and thank you for tuning in. And the last thing I like to do, if I can, is give it shout-outs. And today I want to just give a shout-out to my dad. He's always had my back. And if you're listening right now, which I know you are, I love you. All right. Bye, folks.